Amanda, Christina, thank you so much for sharing. This is such a wealth of information for educators. And I guess my first question is, you have mentioned a number of really valuable data sets that are available through all these methods of observations. And so what is really the way for teachers or for other educators to contact and engage with WRI and access this information? You mentioned the data from the projects, the citizen science data, but also the data from the buoy and from other observations. Are this data available on the website?
Yes, so the buoy data is available right on the website, and I'll grab the link and I'll put it in the chat in just a moment. And every cruise that students take or community members take on the Jackson, they go home with their data sheet for the day. And then we collect all of those data sheets as well, and we put them in a database that we keep on site. We don't have that published on the website though.
So of course, the majority of our audience K-12 teachers, and they're all very eager to know how to engage with WRI and how potentially perhaps schedule these type of really unique experiences for their classes. So could you share a little bit more? What can we do? How we can travel on your boat?
Yes, I'm so glad you asked. So our cruises run from about mid-April through mid-October each year. And to sign up, you can visit our website, and that will give you the information, but you can basically contact our registrar, Roxana Taylor, and she'll sign you up for our cruises. We still have some spots available for this spring, not too many, but there are some available if you're really jazzed about getting out as soon as possible, as soon as it's warm enough to do so. But registration will open for the fall season on the second Monday in May. So if you're looking to plan ahead, you can put that date on your calendar to get in touch to schedule that way. And that's the same way that you can schedule classroom programming as well. Many groups will choose to bring 2 classes of students out for the day, have one group be on the boat and one group in the classroom in the morning, and then swap them in the afternoon so they can spend a whole day with us experiencing all of the different both on water and landside programming that we offer. So that is certainly an option that is available for groups that are coming on the Jackson, the one that's berthed in Muskegon. In Grand Haven, we don't have the same facilities available, so that would just be the vessel program down there. But I did not note that one goes through the Grand River to go out to Lake Michigan. So that's a great option for groups that are located in the Grand River watershed, because they can get out and see how, if they live in Grand Rapids, for example, the same river that they see when they're driving around in their hometown also flows into Lake Michigan at the very end, and how the things that they do at home in the city do end up having an impact on the lakes. So that's always a nice way to, when students can connect where they live with the water impacts, that can be a useful thing. And yeah, so all the information about how to register is on our website, including the cost, which is just $150 for the Jackson and $125 for the Angus. So yeah, we hope that you will choose to sign up to join us out on the lakeshore for some of these programs.
Wonderful, thank you. And I also wanted to remind that Miracle funding is still available for this academic year. So those of you who are participating with your schools and that could be a very interesting opportunity for your students to join through this mini grant that could help with transportation costs potentially, and the subsidized cost of this field trip. And Christina, you really preempted my second question. I was going to ask you, like, which one to choose? Like, is it better to go to Grand Haven or to Muskegon? Where should we start? What are thematic differences? Is it just about only the geography of the itinerary, or you also offer different different curriculum or kind of geared to different levels of students or perhaps different ages. Could you talk a little bit more about the differences between these two vessels?
Absolutely. It's a great question. The basic curriculum is the same. So the water quality tests and observations that we do and the way that we're using those observations to make claims about the trophic status of lakes, those are effectively the same on both vessels. There's a couple of small differences in exactly what way that we test dissolved oxygen, for example, but for the most part, that part of the curriculum stays the same across the vessels, and we're just sampling different water bodies or different parts of the Lake Michigan shore. But of course, there's much more place-specific differences. So in Muskegon, we're talking about how the history of industry in Muskegon Lake and the current shoreline development influences the water quality in the biological communities, for example. Whereas down in Grand Haven, when we're going into Spring Lake is the inland lake that we sample. There's lots of large houses there with lawns that presumably get heavily fertilized, and with the higher water levels, there's a lot of like shoreline armoring that goes on. So how those things impact the water quality. So it's really the place-based details that distinguish between the different cruises. But the hands-on science remains the constant through those things. And so, yeah, I think as far as how to choose, I would say like what's resonant with where you are and like where you live, like what watershed you live in. I know sometimes transportation can be a real challenge for educators. So honestly, like which one is closer for you and you can get buses to take you out to easily, you'll have a great experience on either vessel with our wonderful teaching team.
And just a quick note, the Jackson is larger than the Angus, and so you can have more students on the Jackson than on the Angus.
Yes, we have
What
a
is the
slightly
capacity?
larger, it's 28 total participants on the Jackson versus 26 on the Angus. So yeah, that can make a difference for some classes.
So it could be a challenge for a very large class, right?
Yeah, but I think that's where if you're coming on the Jackson and you want to spend like a whole day, you can do that like half in the morning in the classroom and half on the boat and then swap. There's also other things to do out on the lakeshore. So sometimes groups will be on the boat with us and go to the Silver Sides or do other things in the area instead of our classroom programming. So there's no shortage of ways to spend time if you're coming out to see us.
This is great to know. And would you say that this program really is relevant only to science courses? So would you also recommend it to, some other programs like we have here, in this community, in Merkel community, have English teachers, so social studies teachers, other humanities teachers, arts teachers. So is there anything in this program that would be also appealing to non-science classes, or it's fully dedicated to science?
It's an interesting question. You might gather from my bio that Janet read that I am an advocate for like lower walls between disciplines than other people might have perspective on. So though our programs are definitely very science focused, I think there's a lot of connections that you could make to many subject areas across your curriculum. One suggestion that I heard from a teacher this year was actually like to think about in their English language arts classes, like what the prefixes of phyto and zoo mean when you're looking at phyto and zooplankton, and like use that as a jumping off point to make connections in other areas of subject matter. Certainly, I'm a big fan of arts integration into other areas, and so using the science content that you learn as a springboard for different kinds of arts creation. I think there's tons of potential for that. So they're definitely very science oriented, but I believe that a creative teacher could use the experience that they have on the vessel to connect across many different disciplines. Certainly also, all the things I was mentioning of like the history of Muskegon Lake and, other local history, how human activity impacts our water resources. Those are all things that transcend the boundaries technically of science, and are a lot about human behavior and history. So I think there's lots of connections to be made. I don't know if you have any other comment on that, Amanda.
I would like to add too that the landside program is definitely, I would say, interdisciplinary. It's certainly science focused, but we tie in a lot of math. We have students doing some writing and observations that we try to tie in some of the arts. So students are really participating in many of the subject areas, especially when we get students at that elementary 4th, 5th grade band that are visiting on the Jackson. So we do try to tailor our programming as well with kind of the classroom side, indoor or outdoor, to teacher needs as well. So if we get a teacher that is a math teacher, we can focus more on some of those math concepts or history, social studies. So it's somewhat customizable for the classroom programming to complement what happens on the vessels.
And since you
Okay.
mentioned math, Amanda, just wanted to add to that one thing that we do on the vessels is every test or observation, we do them 3 times and get the average of those 3 data points as a way of making sure that our data is sound. But I know for a lot of students that come on the vessel, doing the process of averaging is like a newer skill, like something that they haven't had a lot of practice with. So that's certainly something that they can get a taste of on board and could be built upon back at school in math class.
Do you see some students coming back or some schools coming back every year or every few years?
We have some schools that have been coming to us for decades, and it's so neat to see that continuity. We always welcome new districts, of course, and new schools, but it is nice to have some teachers that have been with our program for such a long time bring back students year after year. I think it's really a testament to the good work that the science instructors do on the vessel and the great experience that the students have.
Oh, this is wonderful. This must be so rewarding. You also mentioned in your presentation opportunities for teacher training. You mentioned the project WET. So could you also develop a little bit more about how teachers can take advantage of this opportunity, what it really takes, what is the time commitment, and again, how and with whom they need to engage if they want to participate in this program?
Sure. So with Michigan Project WET, we are able to offer workshops, teacher training in many curriculums, but related to Project WET. But one that might be of interest is climate water resilience. That one is for middle school and high school. So we do offer that training. It can be done virtually or it can be done in person with one of our facilitators from across the state. And then we have our other Project WET trainings as well that are offered virtually or in person. So you can actually connect with me or with Janet to get more information about Project WET, and I'd be happy to schedule a training for you. There is a cost associated with that for the books, but it's a great training. We can offer those for full schools or just a smaller group of teachers. We can customize those to meet needs. And then also we'll be having some MEECS trainings coming up for the new water quality and ecosystems units. Those will be later in the school year for 2023 here. We're looking at the fall season for that, fall or early winter. And we'll have more information on our website when that is available. And so we would encourage people, if they're interested, to attend those as well. Those will be geared towards middle school and high school. And those would be free to attend.
This is wonderful. And you have been doing lots of those trainings. Janet, would you like to maybe share a little bit more as well?
Well, what's I think wonderful about our whole program is its longevity. I mean, the fact that something got started decades ago and it has really, I think, reached, as Christina mentioned, so many thousands of people. And we kind of hid some of the groups a little bit. We can say, well, we're going out for 2.5 hours, but we've always brought everybody back, just so you know. It's not one of those 3-hour tours where you end up wherever. But anyway, it's just an exciting feature that Grand Valley has that's really very neat. It's I know that the next webinar is going to be about the inland seas, so that's kind of a good pairing of their program up in Traverse City with what we do here. But the folks that work this program, I mean, they love it, you know. And it's just interesting to note that over the years, some of our boat instructors are retired teachers or were retired teachers. And I think we had one, I don't know, I can't remember how long Vanderlaan from the White Lake area was with us, but he started in 1996. And he, I think, retired out like in the late 2008 or something like that. So these are folks that have had a long teaching career, and they still come back and enjoy what's going on with the program. And maybe Christina can mention a little bit about looking for some more instructors. So you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I just was going to. We are actually hiring currently for science instructors for the 2023 season. So if you have listened to all this and you aren't just like, I want to bring my students out for a couple of hours, but like, I want to be involved in that, the job listing is available on the GVSU jobs page. It's a pretty fun and flexible gig. Like Janet said, there are a lot of retired teachers who want to stay involved in teaching, but are kind of feeling done with the full-time classroom experience, who have a passion for our local waters and want to be involved in teaching about them, but certainly not, you don't have to fit that demographic or profile to work with us. So if you have questions about that job listing, feel free to get in touch with me directly. And I guess the other thing I wanted to say, when I was listening to you talk about the teacher professional development, Amanda, is like, I feel so moved when I think about how many students have come out on our trips and the impacts that has had. But also, I recognize with like great humility that we have them for 2.5 hours, and that's like all the time that we get with them. And so the more that we can put some of these ways of teaching about the water and place-based learning practices and principles in the hands of teachers who are spending time with students day in, day out, I think that can carry our impact even further. So that feels like a really exciting area to me to expand our reach beyond just the short time that we have with the students. Although we do hear sometimes from students who were so impacted by our cruises that they decided to go into aquatic science, which is always very meaningful to hear, or students that come on with a Grand Valley class who are like, oh, I did this when I was in 4th grade with my science class or whatever. So we know we're having an impact, but I feel like we can help even more by putting more tools and practices in teachers' hands to use them at their schools.
Are there any volunteer opportunities with your program?
I think if people were interested, we could think about what that could look like. Typically, we've been more of a staff-based program, but if there was an interest, we could probably figure something out.
And my last question for you is, of course, during the past couple of years, we have really seen huge transformation in the system of education, both in the higher education and K-12. Because of the pandemic, so many things have moved online. And we're really now only, I think, scratching the surface in exploring how we can combine online education with hands-on education. And this speaker series is really very much about this, about how we can put together the advantages of the online education with traditional face-to-face, with outdoor education. And so could you comment perhaps on how the past 2 years have affected your program? What is your experience? We all kind of were put on hold because of the pandemic, and now we are redeveloping different projects and different programs. Is it just going back to how it was before the pandemic, or you see that there is some, qualitative and quantitative transformation in your program as a result of the past 2 years?
I'll speak to the teacher professional development side, and I'll let Christina answer the vessel side. For the teacher professional development that we offer, the pandemic really gave us the opportunity to explore the online space in a way we had not before. So with Project WET, we're now offering virtual trainings, which has been a huge asset in getting that information, the training to teachers, so that they can then translate that into those hands-on experiences in their classrooms. So I think that's been one change that we've undergone, is to offer some virtual options for professional development.
I think for the vessel program, it's hard to recreate online the experience of being out on Lake Michigan, doing observations and water quality testing. You really can't smell the sediment that you pulled up from the bottom of the lake, or get those kind of really deep sensory experiences mediated through the screen. So as far as the vessel program goes, I would say we're just really excited to be doing these programs again, and to there's such a hunger, I think, still for people to get back to in-person experiences, and the value of place-based learning, I think, was really underscored during the time that we really had to be more online. Although really being outside was and remains one of the safer places to be. So yeah, I think we're mainly really excited about being back to doing these programs in person, and offering more place-based experiences. I think we could do more to help students, for example, look at their own watersheds, as maybe an extension of their learning with us. So that's something we could look at developing or offering, I suppose. Just getting more tools in the hands of students to explore where they are. So those are resources that we could offer in an online space, but I think we're more deeply committed than ever to in-person and place-based experiences as a result of not being able to do them for a while.
Well, and I will say that witnessing the joy and kind of disbelief of students when they are able to see the lake for sometimes the very first time, going out on the boat and seeing how majestic Lake Michigan is, it never gets old to see those expressions of wonderment. So it's a really special experience that teachers can bring their students out to Grand Valley aboard the DJ Angus or the W.G. Jackson, and we hope that you'll find the time in your classroom schedule to join us.
And just build a little bit on what Christina was saying. 2020 was not the greatest year for us, because we were unable to operate either of our boats. But we still had, for instance, Grand Valley faculty saying, help, we want that experience, if you could just give us something. And so kind of an online type of lab was developed for them. We had some videos in there, and we had something that mirrored what lab material they would have been using had they been on the vessel. But there's nothing like being out in the water. I will agree with that 100%. That's where we need to be, certainly, with the Angus and the Jackson vessel-based program.